COVID-19 has made it an even scarier world than usual. Since the dawn of time, in the face of fear, amid the chaos, wreckage, and confusion, writers have been a source of encouragement, fortitude, and determination. Fight with love, my friends. Use your words. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Poet's Return. We hope that during this pandemic, you are staying inside, staying safe, staying healthy. We know that a lot of people are being affected in a huge way, in a lot of ways, financially, career-wise, not knowing what the future may hold, but we do hope that during this time you can persevere and find hope in things like art and community. Even though we're obviously social distancing, there's still a lovely community out there for you here at Poet's Return and in many other platforms that are still really trying to keep people together, to keep a sense of just that sense of collaboration, that sense of knowing that there's somebody out there that's listening and that you're not alone. So in light of COVID-19, today's episode speaks about emotional resilience, something that is difficult for not only artists, but every human being, every animal, every living creature that faces adversity, having the resilience to push forward even when things are tough, but especially for people that we are very consciously aware of our struggle. And sometimes it's hard to mentally and emotionally get through the hurdles of life. So emotional resilience is something that we talk about today on this final, for now at least, the final episode of the Minisode trilogy with Conor Turoci. Today's episode, we're going to talk about quite a few things. We're going to you'll get to hear a little tidbit, a couple of excerpts from Conor and my actual conversations starting to get into the reconstruction of conflict at the Edge of the Wilderness, which is the 4-act play that the two of us have been working on, which we talked about last week and the week before. The week before last week, before Alicia's episode. And it's just this play, obviously, there's a lot of obstacles. It's very ambitious. We've tried to tackle those obstacles over the years of working on this piece. We've always kind of fallen away and worked on our own individual projects and then come back to it. And without just social distancing, but just actual geographic distance, Conor being in the Bay and then now in Texas, and I'm still here in, obviously, Los Angeles. So it's just interesting when you collaborate with someone who is far away from you and kind of trying to stay motivated and stay accountable. So we talk about that a lot in this episode, and you'll actually get to hear us start to introduce some new ideas to At the Edge, just as a little teaser. But yeah, we're going to talk about a few different things, talk about getting into specificity in given circumstances, strengthening conflict, and just exploring the obstacles and triumphs of collaboration. And I'm excited to share this with you, even though, again, times are tough right now. There are always obstacles. We always make excuses for not finishing something or not getting it published or trying to get it published or getting it read aloud. And so we talk about those topics in this episode and just that it's easier said than done. But now is a good time to remind ourselves that it's important to finish things. So here's the beginning of Conor and my discussion on the last part of the minisodes.
Through trying to build a career in LA before even trying to do that, it was so easy for me to just shrug my shoulders and go, okay, what's going to happen tomorrow? Okay.
Right.
And it's that sort of like emotional resiliency that is really, really important to build, and why I'm really thankful that the course that we took, the college course we took, it was so uncompromising. It wasn't easy. It wasn't just show up and you'll get an A. It was really fucking try, man. Really try, and then you might succeed. And if you don't succeed, try again. And yeah. People cried and people hated it, but their illusions were shattered. And that was the best part of that course, from my perspective, was building emotional resilience.
Building emotional resilience is, I think, there's something very interesting about the time that we're living in now, just because
more people have the luxury of not needing emotional resilience than ever before.
Yeah, because we have.
That's exactly it. And I think that because we can live in a time where life is so easy, life is the least violent it has ever been in history, and the least difficult it has ever been in history, that people can afford to not have a warrior mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one topic that Conor and I covered, emotional resilience, the warrior mentality, knowing that being a victim isn't going to really help you in life, nor in your artwork or in your getting any piece of personal writing, personal creativity out there. It's going to be really difficult to share with the world, especially if you kind of think it's all about you. That's something that's very important for me to remind myself when I am getting the courage to share things, is that the minute that I write this or whatever it might be or act it out, it's not really about me. It's about whatever people take away from it, and I have no control over that, which is actually freeing. So yeah, it's getting it out there. So now we're going to go into another small, tiny little tidbit of what me and Conor were talking about, and it goes into sort of the power of story, and Conor speaks about that a lot right now. So here it is.
The way stories, writing, and narrative, fiction and nonfiction, the way that really affects us, the way that helps us grow as human beings is absolutely astounding to me. And it's one of those things that you can very easily discount. You can very easily go without it. But when you have it, when it's there, when you experience the transformational powers of those sorts of things, it is amazing. And I don't really know how else to put it, but it's that sort of feeling that really makes me proud to work on writing. That sort of thing makes me feel like wanting to write novels is not a silly thing at all.
At all.
Because of how transformational they can be.
Oh my gosh, completely. I think it's very powerful.
Narrative fiction and nonfiction helps us. It helps us see, like, oh, okay, this is a way I can keep moving forward, and this I can learn these lessons from these fake people that never existed in any way outside of the imagination.
Right.
It's just a super valuable thing. But part of to that end, I decided that this year I'm going to read a book a week for all year. I'm going to read 52 books in 52 weeks.
So the inciting incident in a play or a story is what happens immediately preceding the action that you're seeing on stage in the story, and particularly, specifically to a play. And inciting incident has got to be a really strong moment before to kind of, as it is the inciting incident, get the play rolling. So this was something Conor and I struggled with. We couldn't figure out why we weren't having a strong enough villain. Our antagonist wasn't quite matching the strength of our protagonist and our supporting characters in the ensemble. And so we thought, why not? And what part of the backstory is missing? And even the inciting incident. This is just a glimpse into us beginning to work on At the Edge of the Wilderness, literally starting from the beginning of the play, even before the audience is seeing anything happen on stage. So here's us kind of introducing that conflict.
Or a good, inciting event for what's happening in our conflict, basically.
Yes.
Because that strengthens JJ's reason for being so adamantly against the mayor.
Right. It clarifies what the conflict actually is. It's not just about someone coming in and throwing weight around. It's someone coming in and throwing political weight around and economic weight around. And the town's actually becoming on the map,
Right.
Like it defines it. Like the conflict was always that. It's just having those terms of this is actually in real terms what's going on in the town right now. Answers some questions that an audience member might have, and that even some of the characters expressed at one point, I think, that I realized, oh yeah, that's actually the question that the audience is going to have. What's the big deal? Okay, so what is the big deal? And that answers that. So then in the first act, we can have some of the characters, maybe even that's something that's very...
So as I'd said, the inciting incident is what happens immediately preceding the onstage action as the story begins for the audience. But the backstory is also something else that is obviously very, very important to get into. And Backstory is always one of those things where it's hard. You want to find that balance between making it too complex to where people can't really string it all together, or it's too much to process and time to process what's happening in live present time, and also making sure that it's strong enough and has enough of a foundation and a strong establishment that your characters have a good world to live in, basically. And since we were dealing with historical events, having this take place pretty immediately following the American Civil War in the Old West during the Gold Rush in a California boomtown, we wanted to make sure that we were keeping it simple enough because there are so many characters with such insanely diverse and complicated backgrounds.
And do we want he and the mayor? Because I do think that that's very strong. But do we want some sort of history between the two of them, and a very simple conflict that's happened in the past between them? This isn't the first time that they've met.
I think that would undercut the conflict in that the mayor is an outsider coming in. He's not part of the community. He's coming in to take power, to take to sort of cut it. What's the word? I think it's stronger if he's a total outsider coming in, and that would be JJ's problem. If there was connection between Hamilton and the town, then it wouldn't be such a big deal that he wants to be mayor.
Not necessarily Hamilton and the town. I'm saying that if, because obviously JJ's history, he has kind of a lawless history, although he's not criminal in the sense of being necessarily violent or insidious. He does have a somewhat lawless history. And so if this guy's running for mayor, a lot of people, especially then, and especially in the West, a lot of the people that ran for office were former lawmen. So how do we know that in JJ's past, the two of them in younger years didn't cross paths? Maybe the mayor has always been a corrupt lawman, and JJ knows that. Maybe part of JJ's cynicism towards the law is rooted in a young, youthful experience with Hamilton. We always have that moment where you think the story's one thing, and then there's that extra little, like, oh shit, and that happened, and when
so one of the things that you deal with in collaborating with even just one person, like Conor and I have been doing for all these years, there are joys, there are obstacles, there are triumphs and victories, there are failures and sometimes misunderstandings. But the cool thing about collaborating is that you're not always going to agree, actually. And the cool thing is that you might each actually change each other's minds, and the most truthful and most specific idea wins.
I'm okay. I'm good with that as long as it doesn't feel like shoehorned or like on the nose. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But I like that. I like that they're aware of each other. That maybe I don't know. Maybe Hamilton had taken a bribe or some point to keep JJ out of jail or something along those lines. I don't hate that idea at all. As long as it doesn't come off implicit,
Well, and maybe the way that we do that is by not making it this huge, ridiculous, like, aha, oh my gosh moment. Maybe it's presented as something
sort of like a throwaway, like
that's available to everyone. Yeah, and that people
I got you.
Yeah.
I support that. I'm good with that.
Okay, cool.
So as we were talking about backstory and about the given circumstances of this play, the given circumstances are complex in a lot of ways with so many different characters, but they're also simple in terms of it's a California boomtown during the Old West, again, following the Civil War. It's a very bloody, kind of somewhat barbaric time. There's a lot of adversities we don't deal with now. And going back to one of the first points we made about emotional resilience, these characters would have extreme resilience of all kinds, not just emotional. And so we had to figure out, who would a villain be during this time? How do we root them in truth while also making them effective? And then you'll also hear, we have a moment of fun, because this is a joy of collaboration, especially when you get to know a person as well as we have. We don't know who wrote what. We've gotten to a point where it's like, did you write this? Did I write this? I can't even remember. So yeah, it's kind of it's kind of a funny moment that Conor and I have.
People were getting hung daily. I mean, it was a very different different level of hardcore. So it's not like people were hush-hush about things that happened. People were going to hangings and bringing picnic baskets.
Right.
Obviously, friends, it's, a crazy time. And we hope that you're staying inside, staying safe. I hope your loved ones are okay, and that we all can come back and jump back into our lives after this. So to tie it all back to the very first episode in this mini little series with Conor, which was Just Finish It, we end with a Neil Gaiman quote that Conor shares, and it's finish something. Get those pieces written, read, get them on their feet. They're meant to live, and hopefully Conor and I can follow our own advice and not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. But we will leave you with this, my friends. This quote: until next time, keep using your words well, and take care of yourselves.
And if it doesn't light the world on fire like you thought it would, start the next one.
Yeah.
Maybe that one will. Maybe the next idea will be even better. And of course it will be, because you'll be a better writer for having done for having finished something, for having done it. And that was Neil Gaiman finished his masterclass with that advice. He said, the best advice I can give to any writer is finish things.
Bart and Sarah start dancing. Oh yeah, what the fuck? Why did I ever? Which one of us wrote that he's smart?
I don't know, but it's actually one of the cool things. It's like reading this, I have no idea who wrote what. So like,
Poets Return, a poetry podcast where artists share their work and discuss their process, and let you see the story behind the words. This audio production is copyright 2019 by the Poets Return podcast, all rights reserved. The copyrights for each story are held by the respective authors. No duplication or reproduction of this audio program is permitted without the written consent of Melissa Booey.
I think it's far more, I don't know, far more Jacoby. I just think it's also far more, I know Jeremiah's worked up and he's been drinking since the morning. But this speech on pen, because I'm not like this, I happen to like those people. We have him getting all worked up. Jeremiah's voice is loud enough that much of the bustle is quieted in the rest of